This might be my favorite since the original. I am so excited. Let's talk about Scream 6. In the next installment, the survivors of the Ghostface killings leave Woodsboro behind and start a fresh chapter in New York City. Alright, let's get into it. The directors Matt Olpin and Tyler Gillette absolutely blew my expectations out of the water with this film. They seriously nailed it with this sixth installment into the Scream franchise. I was actually a little bit nervous going into the film because I was hoping for a slightly more unique approach than Scream 2022 took, as they took a very familiar approach. I still think it's amazing and it works really well, but I was hoping just for something a little bit different in this film. I do think we get that. However, I do think the trailers saying I'm something different constantly over and over again made me have slightly higher expectations for how truly different this film would be. I will say it does follow a Scream formula, but I think it works really well, and there's enough new elements that it still feels like Radio Silence's version of Scream, and not something like Scream 2022, where that was much more a highlight of Scream as a whole and a love letter to Wes Craven, which is totally okay. But as for Scream 6, I do think they really did a fantastic job. I loved it and I can't wait to see it again. This time they expanded on characters we know and love while exploring the characters from Scream 5 and bringing in extremely fun new characters and bringing Ghostface to an entirely whole new level. Overall, I think the story direction is really well done and it was entertaining at the very least. I was engaged with the screen the entire time, and it absolutely earns that 2-hour runtime. I should also mention now, before we get on to the cast and the characters, I got to see this in the 4DX 3D screening fan event, so it was just a theater full of Scream fans. I had honestly one of the best seats in the house, direct center, almost midway through the seats. It was just a perfect viewing spot of the screen, and it was my first time using the 4DX seats, so that was really entertaining. Every time that there was a stab or someone dying and there was blood on screen, we as an audience were getting misted with water, so that was hilarious and just made the film much more enjoyable. Like, it felt almost more like Scream. Like, I'm getting giddy talking about it. It was just really fun. Alright, but let's get into the cast and characters. This time around, we do get another great ensemble cast. We get further exploration of the characters that survived from 5, otherwise known as the Core 4, as well as the returning legacy characters. Gale Weathers is fantastic, and Kirby Reed is really, really well done in this film. I think they were both perfectly used. Like, they weren't overused, they weren't underused, they were in the film for just a perfect amount of time. They also do address Sydney's absence from the film. Yes, she's not in the film, that is not a spoiler, but I actually think it works really well within the story, and it's kind of the most sensible thing for them to do, as if they would have brought back Sydney into this story, I don't know where she would have fit, and it kind of would have dampened her as a character because it would have essentially made her dumb for coming back into this situation on purpose. But as for all of the legacy characters, I am really excited to talk about the direction of Kirby in my spoiler review. But as for the newcomers, everyone does a fantastic job. There was only one character that I had an issue with. It was partially the writing, but also I just don't feel like the performance completely sold it. I do want to see it again so that way I can solidify my ideas, but I will be going fully in depth onto my issues with that character in my spoiler review. But overall, everyone is fantastic in this film, from Samara Weaving to Tony Revolori to Mason Gooding to Jasmine Savoy Brown, Jenna Ortega, and of course, Melissa Barrera. Everyone does a fantastic job, and I think all of the returning characters do a much more exceptional job than they did in Scream 5. I still really love Scream 5, but I think the characters are just much more developed and much more lively in this film, and I really enjoyed it. But again, everyone is great except for a few lines of dialogue that probably should have been left out. But overall, it was a really entertaining and engaging Scream film, and the characters were fantastic. Let's move on to the story for Scream 6. Overall, I think the story direction is still fresh and fun. Yes, it does have similarities to Scream 2, I will say that right now, but it doesn't have similarities to Scream 2 in the way that Scream 2022 had similarities to Scream 1996. I still think there's enough new and unique different elements within this film to fully separate it from Scream 2. Yes, the motive of the killer or killers might not have been totally 100% original, but I still think it's delivered in a way that is probably the most entertaining and engaging since Scream 1996. This film, at the end of the day, was a 2-hour runtime that felt like an hour and 20 minutes because of how well paced it was. I was able to predict one of the killers throughout the film. That's all I can really say though here in this spoiler-free review, but I can't wait to dive into all of these spoilers and Easter eggs in my Scream 6 spoiler review. Let's move on to the visuals. This time around, Scream 6 has a much bigger budget and they absolutely use it to their advantage. The film feels intimate like Scream should, while still using elements of New York City that are really fun, unique, and overall really, really creepy, but also just fun, engaging. I absolutely loved my experience with Scream 6. The kills in this film look amazing, and they are absolutely the most brutal since the original. But Scream 6 absolutely steps it up a notch by showing nearly every instance of a knife going into someone. It is really brutal and it is a tough watch, I will say that now, but this film also easily has one of possibly my favorite death of a killer in any of the Scream sequels. And moving on to the score is once again done by Brian Tyler, and I think he does another fantastic job at making this film feel like Scream, while overall just making it his own type of flair. He works really well with radio silence. The newly added non-diegetic sound was fantastic, while being woven into the diegetic sound with certain songs used in the film I thought was really, really well done, as well as all of the diegetic sounds were nasty and terrifying because you hear the slicey slice, you hear the stabby stab. It's a lot, and it's really, really well done though. Alright, let's move on to the final thoughts with no spoilers this time because I will be doing a full spoiler review for Scream 6. Overall, Scream 6 delivered one of the most engaging and entertaining horror movie theater experiences I've ever had. I love this film through and through, seriously, even though there are some issues that I have with it, almost like any other horror sequel, but at the end of the day, the fact that it's the most engaging and entertaining since the original, you just have to give Radio Silence and everybody else on the crew a round of applause because they did a truly fantastic job, and I do think Wes Craven would be happy. I definitely will be purchasing the steelbook for this film, as well as probably seeing it 2 more times in theaters. The killer motive and reveal was enjoyable, and I think Radio Silence does a good job at keeping the franchise new and fun while still honing back to what makes a Scream film a Scream film. This is one of my favorite horror sequels ever, and I can't wait to do my Scream franchise ranking, as well as all of the characters in the franchise ranked, along with every single kill in the franchise ranked. That's all for this Scream 6 spoiler-free review. I'm Carter Scotland Allen, and I will see you guys in my Scream 6 spoiler review coming soon, along with all of the other Scream 6 content. Please stay tuned. I'm super excited to bring out all of this new fun content. Stick around. I'll talk to you guys later. Peace.